Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lowdown Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. And today on the show, we're going to be talking about Jarred Vanderbilt, who, I guess, like an hour or so before I was going to go live. Well, originally, I was going to go live way earlier. And then we got the Jarred Vanderbilt update, and I wanted to wait and see if anything more would come out. And also grab some kind of background materials. Also talk to Jen about, coming on the show. But this is more of a PR thing, more so than it is a PT thing, because we don't really know what injury Vanderbilt is dealing with. So today we're going to be talking about that, and going over the various aspects of that story. We're going to be talking about some of what is going on with why the Lakers are consistently frustrating on this injury front. And then I promised you guys earlier in the week, because I wasn't able to get to all of the questions this last Sunday, that I would go back and find specifically the Twitter questions and Discord questions that I wasn't able to get to on Sunday. Quick reminder, please do hit subscribe everywhere it is that you get your podcasts. If you guys are listening to this in the morning, if you guys are watching live right now, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And also, do me a favor and hit that like button as well. We kind of cruise at about like 80 to 100 likes or so per show. See if we can get that up to like 150, 200. I have no idea why that would help. I would imagine it has all to do with algorithms and SEO and all of that nonsense. But seeing as we all operate through that nonsense, I would appreciate if you guys could give me a little bit of a boost there. And then if you guys are watching on Twitter, which, you can find me on Twitter at Anthony Irwin LA, please do head on over to youtube.com/@Lakers Lounge, where you can find the show. One last little programming note before we get going. Tomorrow, meaning Thursday morning, I will be doing the Basketball Passport pod with Lee Ellis. Those shows have been fantastic so far. He is really good at this. People seem to really be enjoying the vibe that he and I have, and the chemistry that we're kind of building right now. That project has been really fun to get going and get off of the ground. So if you guys want to tune into that, we will be recording tomorrow at 8:30 Pacific time, 10:30 my time, 11:30 Eastern. But that show sits on YouTube. That is youtube.com/@basketballpassport, where you could find that show, as well as everywhere that you get your podcast, preferably on Odyssey. All right. Without any further ado, with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about Jarred Vanderbilt and his recovery, which has not faced any setbacks, but is taking place at a rate much slower than the Lakers anticipated. Sure, words don't mean anything. So let's start with the first update, the official update that we got. This is Mike Trudell at Lakers Reporter on Twitter, who wrote, Jarred Vanderbilt's rehabilitation will continue for the next couple of weeks before the next update. He's been ramping up activity, but the progression has been more gradual than the team anticipated. They'll be patient as his body builds up. There have been no setbacks, and initial expectations have been adjusted, and they want to keep the long term in mind. All right, I'm going to do the Obama. I remember one of my favorite skits was Key and Peele doing the Obama translator thing. I'm going to keep this on the screen. So Jarred Vanderbilt's rehabilitation will continue for the next couple of weeks before the next update. Vando is going to miss at least the next couple of weeks, is what that first sentence means. He's been ramping up activity, but the progression has been more gradual than the team anticipated. He's recovering more slowly than the team was hoping. They'll be patient as his body builds up. Fluff. There have been no setbacks, but initial expectations have been adjusted, and they want to keep the long term in mind. Here's the first update that we got from Vanderbilt. Check the date on this too. It is cropped out, but the date was like early February of this season, or not this year, this season, but February 5th, 2004. Um, the Lakers tweeted, Jarred Vanderbilt has been diagnosed with a right midfoot sprain. He will be reevaluated by team doctors in approximately 3 to 4 weeks. One more quick little note here while we're on the subject. Dan Wojcicki tweeted this out after Mike Trudell tweeted out what he did. Quote from Dan, there had been rumblings about this in recent days around the team and league. Another disappointing start to the season for Vanderbilt, who debuted last year on December 2nd. The Lakers are missing his defensive versatility, rebounding in size. In the meantime, more burn for Rui, Max, and Connect. All right. A lot of stuff to process there. I want to talk about before we get to like the Lakers handling of this information, because we've had that conversation before. I want to try to give you as clear a picture as I can, given the information I have had throughout this entire ordeal. Go back to before the season started. I was told that essentially, Vando's initial injury was a really tricky one, and that when the season ended, now when I say like, way back, this is like right after the season, because I don't know if you guys remember, but last year while I was writing for Lakers Daily, I wrote that I hadn't been hearing anything about Gabe Vincent coming back anytime soon or Jarred Vanderbilt coming back anytime soon, even though the reports were that Gabe was going to be back any day and that Vanderbilt was hoping to be back sometime during the playoffs. Eventually, Vanderbilt was actually cleared for a playoff game. The Gabe thing, obviously, I wound up being wrong about. He was able to play in the playoffs, and good for him. I like, if there are things that I'm happy to be wrong about, it's that. Like, if I'm hearing that, and these are Lakers people that I was talking to, when that information came out, I texted a few people. I was like, wait, this isn't at all what I've been hearing. And the people that I was talking to were like, yeah, us neither. We were kind of surprised we meaning that the Lakers, or the people, the Lakers people I was talking to back then, when they said like, we are also kind of surprised by this, pleasantly surprised, but surprised nonetheless. And then, fast forward to Gabe getting out there and playing, and he didn't look very good. I mean, part of it, he wasn't very good all year, but he also just didn't look quite right. And so I asked those same people, like, hey, are we sure Vanda or Gabe is healthy? And without getting people in trouble here, essentially the response that I was getting is like, we think like he was cleared to play. Our doctors cleared him to play. His camp said that he was ready to go, and he is ready and raring to go. So we aren't going to get in the way of all of those factors. But not to say that they were concerned that like he could further aggravate anything by getting out there and playing. There was just some concern that he wasn't quite 100% by the time he got out there during those playoffs. Vanderbilt was another story, right? Like Vanderbilt was like, yeah, he's hoping he's on the mend too. We're hoping to get him back during the playoffs sometime was the leaking there and the reporting there. Again, that was not what I had been hearing in the run up to that. And so again, I asked people like, what? Like, where is this coming from? And those same people were like, yeah, I don't know. This doesn't make any sense to us either. And then in Vanderbilt's case, like he never did get back onto the court, right? He was cleared for that one playoff game, but did not play, which appears to be nothing but gamesmanship at this point. Um, so, uh, fast forward after that to the off season, and right after the season, I checked in on both. Um, from the people that I spoke to, the thought was that like Gabe would continue his rehab and his conditioning and all of that stuff and be 100% by the time that the season started or the next season would start. Vanderbilt, there wasn't a consensus on what I was hearing. Vanderbilt, I was, essentially the story that I was getting was like, some people thought that like just rest was needed. Other people I was talking to was like, yeah, we're pretty sure this is going to require surgery. And we never got that official update from anybody, on any kind of surgery that Vanderbilt did. Now, fast forward from there to media day, right? And Rob Pelinka was asked about the guys, various guys being healthy coming into camp. He said Gabe is good. And then he said that Vanderbilt is still rehabbing. And or I guess JJ said that. To which I was like, rehabbing what? Like, and then I believe it was Rob who picked up on that point and said, yeah, Vanderbilt actually had surgery on both of his feet earlier on this summer, right when the season ended. All right, cool. Good to know, I guess. The surgeries that we were that he told us about then was surgery to address whatever happened to Jarred Vanderbilt with that initial injury. Again, all that we were told about that injury was it was a right midfoot sprain. That could mean anything. Like, so they so apparently, Vando was like, all right, well, we're going to work on the one foot. And he had some bone spurs in the other foot that, since he was going to be off of his feet anyway, the doctor went in and took care of those too so that he could just, stay off of his feet and rehab both at the same time whenever he was able to get back onto his feet. So still though, that update was obviously before training camp, and Rob Pelinka said and JJ said, yeah, we're hopeful that he'll be good to go by the time the season starts. Remember, the initial injury took place back in February of this year. He was cleared to play in a playoff game last season. Then the hope coming into this season was that he was going to be ready to go by the time the season started. Now here we are on November 20th, being told a couple weeks from now, we'll get another update on this guy. He still isn't ready to go. We're going to be in December by the time we get the next update on Jarred Vanderbilt. And who knows what that update is going to be. Hopefully it's a good one. Hopefully it's that everything is good to go. But if we get like we're one or two, or I guess a few updates away from being a calendar year from the initial injury in the first place. And that's where, we'll talk here in a second about like the handling of this information, or at least the messaging of this information, why the Lakers kind of struggle with it and why it can be so frustrating here in the next segment. But as far as like the timeline that we're talking about here, it's all been obfuscation. It's all been this ambiguous, well, we'll see when he's able to go. And the people that I was talking to behind the scenes were all like just consistently, and it would drive me insane too, because I would ask around about this. Dan tweeted that there were murmurings of I've been telling you guys on this show for months now. Like, well, we'll see Vando when we see Vando, right? That's what I was saying to you guys, because frankly, I don't like reporting on injury stuff, because there's just, as you guys can see, the messaging and the information flow is too complicated for anybody, I think, to get a real hold of. And yet, like, that's kind of what we're forced to do, is like, we're forced, we, meaning like those of us who are doing, covering this team and reporting on this team and analyzing this team, we're kind of forced to tell you guys or translate these updates for you guys as best we can, with imperfect information, when in reality all this would be served, or all this would be, this wouldn't be a problem anymore if the Lakers just did something like the Warriors did earlier tonight, when they offered an update on D'Anthony Melton. I didn't grab the screen grab. I guess I could if you guys want, but it does. I'll just read it really quick. D'Anthony Melton injury update on 11:20. Golden State, quote, Golden State Warriors guard D'Anthony Melton, who has missed the last 2 games due to a sprained left ACL, underwent further testing to determine the extent of the injury. The test indicated that it is in D'Anthony's best interest to proceed with ACL surgery. He is scheduled for surgery in the near future and will miss the remainder of the 24-25 season. End quote. That's it. So from now on, if you're a Warriors fan and you're hoping to see Melton back, you can just point to that and say, like, we're not going to see him again this year. He is out for the remainder of the year. But if you're a Lakers fan and you've been hoping to see Vando back for the last 8-10 months or so, we've been getting updates every 2 to 4 weeks or so that, well, we'll maybe see him in another few weeks. Well, maybe we'll see him in another few weeks. And all that does is piss off fans and make them think differently about Jarred Vanderbilt. I am in no way whatsoever saying that Vanderbilt is like taking his sweet time and getting back. The body allows like what the body can do. Like the body has strict limits on what the body can do, and you don't want to push them, because this could become a bigger problem, especially with feet being the foundation of this guy's livelihood. I am not angry at Vando for any of this, to be absolutely clear. He can't control how the Lakers handle this information or how his agency handles this information. But let's just say, and I don't know what the initial injury was, and I can tell you what it looked like. It didn't look like an Achilles thing, because his foot was turned when he felt that pop, and he stood straight up, and his foot immediately stiffened. When I first saw it, I thought it was a Lisfranc injury, right? Lisfranc is something that any fantasy football player could tell you about. You know what that looks like. You know what impact it has on a player. It ends seasons. It ends calendar years. So when I saw him like stiffen up the way that he immediately did, and he wasn't able to put basically any weight through the foot on his way to the bench and on his way into the locker room, I'm thinking, oh dear God. And so let's just say the Lakers identified then what the injury was. They put him through testing, they put him through the MRI machine, and they come out and they say, Jarred Vanderbilt suffered a Lisfranc injury. Again, not saying he definitely did. I'm just using this as an example. But let's just say the Lakers come out and they say, Jarred Vanderbilt suffered a Lisfranc injury. This requires surgery and a recovery timetable of 8 to 10 months or whatever it is. We will, update you on his recovery during that time, and hopefully see him again in the 24-25 season, or later, midway through the 24-25 season. Like nobody would like blink an eye. Nobody would bat an eye. They would be like, "Ah, man, that sucks. That it's gonna suck to not have Vando for that time. All the best on his recovery. Hope he gets better soon. Hope everybody is as smart as they can be about that recovery." And we wouldn't hear about it again until we got close to the end of that timetable, and we would find out, all right, how did things go? We would probably hear at some point, we would get some update. Jarred Vanderbilt underwent successful surgery and is still slated to return to the court in 6 to 8 or 8 to 12, 8 to 10 months or whatever it would be, 10 to 12 months. and we will keep you posted on his recovery as we see fit. And then we wouldn't get like all these sporadic updates do is remind us that Jarred Vanderbilt isn't healthy. Like that's all it does. All it does is basically to remind fans, oh yeah, that's right, Vando isn't ready to go. Or you see him on the sideline, it's like, oh shit, when was the last time we heard about him? And then you kind of start wondering, well, they said like a couple weeks ago, we're supposed to hear again in a couple weeks. That should be getting close. And then we get the update, and it's like, oh yeah, that's right, he's still hurt. We'll do this whole thing. We'll run it back in a couple of weeks again. It serves nobody. Nobody is served by this approach, and I'll explain why here in a sec. If I find the button, there it is. So, there's a few factors at play here with how the Laker or like why the Lakers seem to struggle with this information compared to other teams. And it all starts with like the Lakers' general approach as an organization, where they are very much about empowering the player, empowering the player in his camp, and empowering the agency with that player, allowing the now that's one way of saying that you know if no, I'm not going to go there, but like if they're very hands off, right? And um what that means now is they are just like us to a certain extent at the mercy of the updates that come from that player's camp. And that's great if you really, really believe in that player's camp and that player's like personal doctors and the people that they are listening to on these recoveries. Um, it's great if that player's camp is um not ambiguous about player recoveries. It's fine if state rights are fine if the states are like generally in accordance with each other. But where state rights get kind of messy is when one state has one set of laws and another state has very, very, very different laws on the same subject. That that's when the federal government has to step in and try to work out and bring those two states together so that they appear to be part of the same country. um if you're the Lakers and you're operating as like in this analogy, the federal government, and you have one player camp who uh, you know provides clear updates, clear information on injuries and stuff like that, and on the progress in the rehabilitation from those injuries or the surgeries necessary, as those doctors see fit. If you have one agency or one player camp operating like that, and then you have another one who's just like, oh, we'll see you when we see you. That's when you should step in and be like, no, no, no. There are still general expectations in terms of the information flow that we are demanding that you abide. And to my understanding, the Lakers don't like to press that button. They don't like to go there and require that player camps operate in a certain way when it comes to these injuries. It's another example of this, right, is how the Lakers don't employ a shooting coach. And the thinking there is that like, well, all of these guys have their own shooting coaches anyway. All of these guys have their personal trainers and stuff like that. So like all that our shooting coach would do is like get in the way or create um, you know, for lack of a better term, conflict on the approach to helping these guys shoot, when in reality, like, you should always provide stuff like that. You should have a hand in every aspect of the player and team relationship. And when you don't, that's how you arrive at a place where like one player has this great shooting coach, has a consistent approach to getting better at shooting, has expectations, and there's constant communication with like what a player is doing to get better at shooting. And then you have another player who's like shooting coach is a little wackier or isn't maybe as organized, doesn't work as well with the coach. And therefore like that player is maybe not working on the right shots. And if the organization never steps in and says like, no, this is like the baseline of our expectations here in our relationship with the shooting coach, or if you don't employ a shooting coach, you can't do that. And that's how you get the mess that we kind of find ourselves in. And that's, I think, part of why the Lakers so consistently have like they acquire shooters and then all of a sudden those guys forget how to shoot. In this case, with the injury stuff, you have there isn't necessarily that baseline of expectation on clarity and transparency with these injuries. And that's how you arrive here at a place with like Clutch, who is kind of famous around the league for some of these weird injury situations. The nth degree example is Ben Simmons, right? Who has missed, I don't know how much time of his current contract and is at real risk when his deal is up, what his next contract is going to look like. That's a Clutch thing, and he is represented by Clutch, and they don't like to offer as much information on injuries, thinking that like, well, the player will just recover, and if we don't provide injury updates, our guys won't be seen as injury prone. But like, I think at this point, I would consider Jarred Vanderbilt kind of sort of injury prone. I would consider Ben Simmons kind of sort of injury prone. And like with Clutch, it's like, well, if their top client is LeBron, you fall into the fallacy of thinking, well, everybody is going to handle their body the way that LeBron does, and everybody can have the freedom that LeBron has in terms of getting himself right and staying right for the entirety of a season. Again, that's fine if everybody operated that way, but not everybody does. And that's where the Lakers, uh, because of the way that they handle this stuff, and then because of how, in this case, Clutch handles their stuff, it leads to a situation here with Vanderbilt where everybody outside of maybe a couple people feels completely in the dark, and you're stuck with these semi-regular updates that only piss off fans. And again, the person who is least served in this situation is the player whose name continues to get kind of dragged through the mud by fans who just think is now just never going to play ever again. Kendrick Nunn also, I believe, represented at the time by Clutch when he went through a very similar thing. All right. So unless you guys have any questions about that, hit me with them. We do have one starred comment, so I'll answer that before we get into the Twitter questions that I promised you guys I was going to answer. We do, however, have to play this bad boy. Always. All right. So Brandon Omang writes, if everyone is healthy, what's your 9-man rotation? I believe I've answered this a couple of times, but I have no problem continuing to do it. If everybody is healthy, I think I would go Austin, Dalton, Vando, LeBron, AD for my starting 5. I would have D'Lo and Rui be my 6th and 7th man. I would have whatever backup center it would be. So pick your backup. If you prefer Jackson, you could go with Jackson. If you prefer Christian, you could Christian Wood or Christian Coloco, you could go with either of those guys. That gets you to 8 guys. And then Max is kind of like that, the guard who steps in and is your, 9th man, 3rd guard. And then like if you extend it to 10, then Gabe fits into that equation too. But that's what my rotation would be. All right, back to Twitter. Oh gosh darn it. I just closed out Twitter. Way to go, me. Oh man, this is going to take a second to pull back up. Unbelievable. Way to go, me. What an idiot. All right. So here's TweetDeck. We'll go on over here. Oh, well, we do have Discord. I'll answer a question on Discord while I pull up the Twitter questions from George Santiago. I didn't answer this specifically, but I thought answered a version of this question. But originally he asked, what type of player do the Lakers need on the floor with LeBron and AD before they flip the switch on games? So I asked for clarification on what that would mean. And essentially he was asking, like, what type of player does the starting unit need so that they don't start the game in the lulls that they have started started a lot of these games with. And I still think it's the 3-and-D wing. If I know Cam Johnson, there was some reporting out there, I think via Sam Amick of The Athletic, saying that, Brooklyn is getting ready to at some point trade all of their good players, whether that's Cam Johnson or Dorian Finney-Smith. Nick Claxton was also brought up. Cam Thomas obviously is somebody who would be a popular acquisition. The Lakers do not need Cam Thomas. We're good there. We're set on buckets, I think. But when it's like Cam Johnson or Dorian Finney-Smith, especially if Johnson looks anything close to what he looked like in Phoenix, that would be like the ideal player. He's tall. He moves his feet well. He's a knockdown shooter. Think of like what Denver looks like when MPJ has it going. They look unbeatable, or they have looked historically unbeatable when MPJ really has it going on both sides of the court. For the Lakers, to get off to the starts that they kind of need to get off to, it would, Rui would need to be more consistent defensively, or Vando would need to be more consistent offensively. And so long as, they kind of have those, like, if you could combine Jarred Vanderbilt and Rui Hachimura, the Lakers would be unstoppable. Like, that first unit would make total sense. Their closing unit would make total sense. You would have that player with Austin, and you could go with you. I would probably assume that Dalton would start. You would have that creative player plus LeBron and AD, and that 5-man unit would be one of the best units in the NBA. And you wouldn't have to worry about those lulls at the starts of these games. So like if that player is the exact kind of player that I would say the Lakers kind of desperately need in order to take that next step forward. I like Dorian Finney-Smith. I like Cam Johnson. Kuz, I'm a little concerned about the habits that he has formed in Washington with such like a just disaster of an organization throughout his time there. But those, if the Lakers got like finals run Kuz, or finals run KCP, or finals run, or Phoenix Cam Johnson, or a couple of years ago Dorian Finney-Smith, then I would say, like, all right, that 5-man unit would make a whole bunch of sense. All right, so the first question that I'm going to answer from Twitter here, Laker Goat 17 writes, what are your thoughts on the Lakers season overall, the first 13 games? They've obviously played a 14th since. Overall, would you say you're surprised in either direction, and do you believe they are proving worthy of the front office investing in this team? Second part of that question is easily the most important, so I'll go with that part first. Yes. Short answer, yes. I think the team sitting at 10-4, sitting in the 3 seed, if they keep this up and there are no tweaks made to the roster, I don't even care if Rob comes on and says, look, we're the 3 seed. How much, what else do I need to do here? Clearly we have it, clearly we're doing something right here. And that can be true. They have done something right. This roster makes a lot more sense under JJ Redick than it seemed to make under Darvin Ham.
I think Dalton Connect's steps forward here is a big part of that. I think D'Angelo Russell moving to the bench and playing the as six man has been a big part of that. And I think the system on both sides of the ball has been a pretty big improvement. And like the communication and the buy-in from all of the guys up and down the roster has been a significant step forward here for the Lakers. And that's why they sit where they do now. I still think, though, if they want to get into that class with Boston and with OKC and with Cleveland, they need to bring in that, that wing that we just talked about here, whether it's either of those Brooklyn guys, maybe both of those Brooklyn guys. I think they need a better backup center than they currently have, and certainly one that we trust to stay healthy more than Christian Wood has, and who knows what's going to happen with Jackson Hayes and the investigation that the league seems to be dragging their feet on. But yeah, as far as like have the Lakers done their job and done enough to prove to the front office that it's a roster or a collection of guys or a core that is still worth pushing chips into the middle of the table on, I definitely think they have done that. Now, as far as like, how do I feel about them 14 games in? I feel pretty good. I really do. The fact that they have successfully executed that plan of getting D'Lo to the bench and maintain the buy-in from him that they have, I think is a huge step forward for the team. Obviously, they're 10-4, so they're doing something right. And I know people are going to say, like, well, their strength of schedule isn't all that great. They've faced a lot of teams with a bunch of injuries. Well, for one thing, there's a lot of injuries out there. The Lakers are also dealing with their own injuries. And like, if I had to like explain if I'm surprised one way or the other, I would say I'm pleasantly surprised by this team. I still thought coming into the season that a head coach wouldn't be enough to be a 5-game swing 1 year to another, because a 5-game swing from one season to another is usually reserved to like acquiring a superstar, not. And now, maybe Darvin is just that bad and maybe JJ is just that good. That 5-game swing is actually possible, but for as things stand right now, man, like I very, very pleasantly surprised by what we've seen here. And let's hope that the Lakers keep it up. I would love nothing more than to have my outlook on this season be hilariously wrong, because it would mean that the Lakers are good and we are all sitting here happy to talk about the Lakers. Let's see. At Alex, we'll just say honest Lakers fan. Do you think if Quincy Olivari can be a rotation player on the Lakers by the trade deadline? By the trade deadline, I would probably imagine that we will get some minutes from Olivari before the trade deadline, whether it's because, maybe injuries happen or something like that, or like, the Lakers. One thing I will say is that this coaching staff and the front office seem a lot more in lockstep than Darvin and Rob were, even though Darvin was in the in the room where it happens. Even though he was there with Rob putting the roster together, I think they had very different visions for how the roster would actually work. Whereas I think JJ and Rob see a lot more eye to eye on how which buttons to press with this roster. And, because of that, if, Rob basically says, hey, we're going into the trade deadline, can we get a few minutes here from Olivari just to kind of see what he can do on an NBA court before we have to make some decisions here and maybe open up a roster spot for him or convert his contract to make him playoff eligible? Can we get some minutes there with him? I think JJ would be a lot more open to that than Ham was when the front office was asking about SPJ or when they were asking about Jay Huff. So do I think he will be a rotation player? Probably not, because the Lakers have so many guards. But like, if that said, if the Lakers do trade like, let's say this actually goes to plan, right? This is all part of the plan, and they bring Olivari up, and he just blows them away. He looks like he belongs on an NBA court, and that gives them the freedom to move like Gabe, or move, even more surprisingly, the more I watch D'Lo in this bench role, the like, I know I had Lakers people tell me that it might impact, their um openness or reluctance to trade D'Angelo Russell, but like, I like, normally when because I was fed the same kind of stuff last year, going into the trade deadline. It was like, man, D'Lo is playing that good. It's really hard to trade him when he's playing this good. And I, like, back then, I because the way that this happened, this isn't like the way that I report, or the relationships that I have with my sources is very conversational. So, like, we'll just have basketball conversations, and they'll sprinkle in intel as part of that basketball, and, like, sometimes I'll, like, clarify, like, really, to make sure we're on the same page, and I'm actually hearing what they're saying. Um, but so, like, what would happen last year is, like, if I was talking to people about D'Angelo Russell while he was on that tear trade deadline, and they'd be like, "Yeah, it's, really hard to trade this guy," and I was like, "Are you sure?" Like, like, I that doesn't seem like great process to allow, like, one a few weeks of good basketball to override a much larger sample size on this guy playing in that role. The difference this time, if I was to have those conversations, this season with this version of D'Angelo Russell playing in this role, I would really understand where the Lakers are coming from on that front. And when I did have that, like, because I did sprinkle in that report on that piece. It was 2 articles ago, I guess, on the one that I wrote in San Antonio. When I was told that, like, I didn't really offer the same pushback that I did last year. I didn't ask as many follow-ups. It was like, you know what? I kind of get it. I kind of do. I still think you probably have to trade him, because 18 mil in this CBA is a lot to pay for a 6-man. But, like, it's I it's been fun to watch him in this role. It's been fun to watch him accept this role and thrive in that role. And if the Lakers, if he plays like this, and his impact numbers stay like this from now until February, that is not a small sample size. And I would kind of understand if the Lakers basically said, like, you know what, let's really, really try to move Gabe instead. Or let's really, really try, like, if we're going to open up space for Olivari, maybe you move Max instead. But, these are the tough questions that you have to ask. These are the even tougher answers that the Lakers have to offer up, not just to me or to any of us idiots covering them, but, like, to themselves, and in terms of their actions. That's where this gets really, really tricky, really, really quickly. But do I think Olivari will be a rotation player? I would be pretty surprised. I Ideally, he's a part of the rotation next year, like right from the get next year. All right. Yeah, I think all right, so LO Lakers writes, have the Lakers discussed trades for Kessler or Time Lord yet? I did hear, like, that they got relatively, I'll say, close-ish on a Kessler trade this summer, is what I was told. Uh, Now, I don't know if the Lakers and the Jazz agree about how close they actually got to that deal, but the Lakers, from the people I've spoken to, like, they thought that had forward momentum on it, and they were like at least relatively close on that deal. Obviously, it didn't happen. As far as conversations with Portland about Time Lord, look, Aaron and I talk about this all the time. All these teams, all these executives are always talking to each other about everyone. And so, like when the Lakers this last summer, the headline this last summer was how the Lakers and Blazers were in, fairly consistent talks with Portland on a Jeremy Grant deal. But while they were talking about Jeremy Grant, they also mentioned Time Lord. They also, as they got into this season, they have spoken about Robert Williams. I know that the Lakers are iffy about his injury history, which is lengthy at this point. But they have talked about him. It's just I don't think those talks have really gone anywhere. All right. I think that is going to just about do it. I'm going to check one more time here for starred comments or live comments. Let's see. Do I have any more in here? Oh, this is a good one. Jalen6724. What do you think JJ's strategy to get 80 to hit threes was? This is from the Lakers Lounge Discord. I'll go ahead and put this in the I'm going to copy that. I'll put the link to the Discord here in the chat. So what was JJ's strategy to get 80 to shoot threes? I think first and foremost, it was, consistent conversations with him about like, where are you comfortable taking threes from? Right. And where do you like, if you're practicing threes, where do you focus on your threes from? And it's pretty clear that AD likes the wings. I think he loves hitting threes as a trailer. I think he loves pick and pop threes. I don't think he likes. So if I'm on the wing, right? Say I'm the left wing, and the basket is over here. This light that I have right here. I think AD prefers to have his shoulders squared to the basket before he goes into his shot. I don't think he likes getting the pass from like the top of the key and then having to rotate his shoulders and then shooting that way. And I think that's the starting point is JJ talking to him about the types of shot that he likes. I don't think AD loves taking corner threes. And I don't think we've seen as many corner threes for AD this year. So I think that's the starting point on the difference in how JJ was able to do that and Ham. And I think the other thing too is the biggest, like this isn't a strategic thing, but it's follow through, not AD's follow through. It's not the Beasley thing where he'd have to stand there and follow through for 15 minutes. No, it's follow through and follow up from the coaching staff and from JJ on like, no, we need you to shoot threes. Like remember, Darvin Ham said he wanted AD shooting like 6 to 8 3-pointers a game last year. But if there's no follow up, if you're not holding him accountable for not taking threes, if you see that AD is passing up on threes, then AD isn't going to take the threes. But what I was told over the summer was the coaching staff, if there was anything that they lost their minds over in practice, like stopped scrimmages for, it was guys passing up on threes and passing up on open threes. And yeah, I think that led to a bit of an overcorrection in the preseason and early in the season where I think guys were kind of forcing threes. But that has to be the starting point. It has to be hammering that home as a habit. And then zeroing in on what that balance is actually going to look like. So I think those are the two biggest factors there on how JJ was able to get AD to take and then obviously importantly make threes. All right. I can feel my voice going, so I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Shouts to everybody for all of those questions. I got to all of the Twitter ones, and I think there's a couple Discord ones left over that I will save for this weekend, or I'll just answer in the Discord. Yeah, fun show. Despite the topic at the top of the show, really wish Vando all the best. I know this is a really frustrating situation for him. I also deal with feet problems. Like at this point in my life, I basically have to wear nothing but like these, like New Balances and Hokas and stuff like that, which aren't always the most stylish. But like there's nothing worse than, waking up every morning and, walking with a bit of a limp and, being limited in the number of things that you can do physically. Like if your feet aren't right, it has this domino effect across the rest of your body, and it could really, really wear you down. So I hope that Vando is doing all right, both physically and mentally and psychologically. And I hope to see him out there soon. As far as when you guys will hear from me next, obviously I talked about Basketball Passport earlier in the show. That'll be tomorrow morning. As far as this show, the next time you guys hear from us will be after the game tomorrow night. It'll be me and Raj breaking down the game against the Orlando Magic. So until then, and until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's. Please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button. Please share this thing. Tell your friends about it. Tell your enemies that you hate it. And I will talk to y'all tomorrow. Here's Avery.